And so 5 years ago, I was a general contractor working 18-hour days, robbing Peter to pay Paul on my construction jobs with no real plan forward. I was 30 years old. I was just trying to survive to the next fix and flip, which is what I was doing at the time, without losing money on it. Today, I'm 36. I own about 10 rental properties across Anchorage, Alaska. I was able to retire my wife when she was 31 years old, and we just moved our family into a 3,600 square foot home. Our housing payment alone, with all the utilities, everything wrapped up to it, mortgage, utilities, everything else, lawn, snow, is about $6,000. And none of it comes out of my actual paycheck. That's $72,000 a year. I don't have to earn extra just to keep a roof over my family. And I got here by following a very specific method of buying income producing properties with very little money out of my pocket and repeating it over and over again strategically. I call it the leverage ladder. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through every rung, the real numbers, the real timeline, what went wrong along the way. And there were several things, and what the first 30 days looks like if you want to start doing this yourself. But first, here's how I got here. So I bought my first fourplex when I was just 21 years old. I lived in one of the units, and then the other three I rented out. And between those other three units, they covered my mortgage, they covered my bills, they covered my eating out, basically everything. And I was 21 years old. Like, I was living there for free. A few years later, I sold it because I saw a shiny object. I sold it for about $100,000. And to this day, I couldn't really tell you what I spent that money on. The only thing I know for a fact that happened is I bought an $800 Brezza espresso machine that I used probably for like a decade. Those things are like bulletproof. That's my souvenir from selling a building that was paying for my entire life. I didn't know how good I had it. Like, I didn't understand what I had. I just saw a lump sum of money at the end of that journey. I grabbed it because I didn't realize the building was doing more for me than that money ever did or would have ever done. After that, from about 24 to 28, I got into the fix and flip world where me and a buddy were borrowing money. We were buying rundown houses, rehabbing them. Like, I remember specifically sitting on the floor and one of these Googling how to patch drywall on YouTube because we just didn't know how to do anything. We taught ourselves everything. We did about 10 to 15 properties over those years, made some money on some, and then of course, lost money on others. And out of all 10 of those properties, I didn't keep a single one. I sold every last one of them for a quick buck. So at 27, 28 years old, I'm working 18-hour days. There's no real separation between the money I'm spending on these construction projects and my own personal money. It's just one big messy pile, and I'm just running on default, looking for the next thing to pull me out of the physical grind of working a hammer every single day. The whole time I'm flipping these houses though, I kept thinking about that first fourplex that I sold and made 100 grand on. I knew the math was better long-term when you hold on to properties, but I didn't know how to do the math, and it wasn't like the green paper you'd put in your pocket. But knowing something and actually doing it are two different things. Flipping was what I knew. It was immediate cash. It was fast cash. And when you're grinding in that phase of life, 18-hour days, literal physical work, barely getting by, the next paycheck always feels more urgent than the long-term plan. The other problem is I couldn't really do it alone. I was dating my wife at this point, so every property we'd buy going forward would mean that both of us are committing to being landlords, both of us agreeing to live in the rental units instead of a nice house, and both of us being on the same page about the strategy that wouldn't necessarily pay off for years. And my wife just wasn't there yet. I'd talk about cash flow, holding on to buildings, rent, all this stuff. It just didn't click yet. And then one night we're out at a bar with my buddy Bernard, and he starts explaining to her about cash flow, and because he's getting it and what it looks like and how the rentals cover your bills. And I'm just watching her face completely change. And she turns to me with this grin. So if we get enough properties and we get enough rent and the properties are performing well and we do a good job and we have all this cash flow, I won't ever have to work again and I can be a stay-at-home mom with the kids all day. And I was like, yeah, that's what I've been saying. And this is obviously way before we had kids, but this was the first time she saw what our life could look like. That was the night that it stopped being something we just talk about and something that we were actually going to do. So let me show you exactly what we did step by step. In 2020, I was 30 years old and we used my VA loan to buy a fourplex for about $700,000, give or take a little bit, with zero down. That's how the VA loan works. We moved into one of the units and rented the other three out. I think rent was about $1,600 per unit at that time. And the rent from the three of those units covered the entire mortgage payment. We slowly remodeled our unit, made it nice, and those rents have since gone up, I don't know, about $2,300 is where they're at right now, give or take. The next year, we bought a duplex using my wife's FHA loan with 3.5% down payment. I think we actually signed those documents while we were on vacation in Hawaii at one of the hotels there. We had our son Watson around that time, and we moved back into the condo after that one for a bit more comfort and a garage, and rented out that duplex unit behind us on the way out. By now, we've got 2 properties, 6 units, and the extra cash flow coming in, we're starting to feel it. And each month is helping with the family budget, the stuff that always feels like it's stretching you thin. Baby supplies, activities, the day-to-day costs that add up. Like, you'll have a budget, but you always have a couple expenditures. You got kids, right? That's what it started to help with. A year or 2 later, we bought another duplex, so another 2-unit building, and moved into that one. Remember, these are owner occupancy moves. We had our second baby, and by this point, we've got 8 rental doors producing income every month as each property added compounds on the one before that because of the rental income from the previous buildings. That counts towards your qualifying income on a mortgage application for your next purchase. So we could actually buy more as we went further along, not less. And this whole time, none of this was coming out of my paycheck. The tenants were paying down the mortgages. You could say I delegated the debt payment to a third party. The properties were appreciating in value. The loan balances were paid down by someone else every single month, and each building was a multiplier on the one before it. That's why I call it the leverage ladder. You're putting down a very small amount of money to control an entire income producing building or asset, and then using the income from that building to reach the next one. A small input for an oversized output. Repeated. Each rung gets you closer and closer to the point where your passive income, all that extra income you're getting, covers your expenses, and you are no longer dependent on your paycheck to live. The leverage goes deeper than most people realize. Because when you buy one of these properties, there are 4 mechanisms that are working in your favor all at the same time behind the curtain. And most people only pay attention to one of them: cash flow, rent minus mortgage minus expenses, whatever's left over, cash flow, right? And in the current rate environment, that number can be sometimes tight. Some properties barely even hit that on year 1. And if that's the only thing you're watching, you're going to talk yourself out of most things on the market right now. That cash flow that you see, that's like an iceberg. You know how they say with an iceberg, you can only see like 10% above the water? That's the cash flow. It's the piece that you can see above the water, and the real return is actually happening below the surface, but because it's under the water, most people don't know how to measure it. Below the waterline, 3 things are going on at the same time that most people miss. Your tenants are paying down your loan balance every single month, which is your equity you're building without even writing a check. The property is appreciating over time as values and rents climb because of inflation, and you're getting benefits on your taxes that offset all of that income. I ran a triplex through an investment worksheet recently for a client. The purchase price was about $875,000. And when you add up all 4 streams all together, the cash flow appreciation, the principal pay down, the tax benefits, the total return on year 1 was like 36%. Just for the record, that is an absurd return. The cash flow by itself was maybe 4 or 5%, but the full picture, 36. It's because you're getting a 4-to-1 leverage position because you're putting down anywhere between 3.5 to 25% on the building or the asset, but you get to claim the benefits as if you bought the whole thing with cash. You're getting the return on the entire building, not just the cash that you put into it. That's also why when I started, I didn't wait for the perfect deal to come around, but the full return picture made every single purchase worth it, and every single one compounded onto the next. I want to show you what this looks like for 2 people that I recently worked with because they came from very different backgrounds and very different industries and starting points, and neither one of them thought that they could actually do this until they spoke with us. One was a veteran who came to us who was really struggling to hold down a job because of PTSD. He was paying about $1,350 for rent, splitting a house with some guys, and he was losing all hope in employment while barely making his rent. By the time he came to me, he had gotten a job, but it was like too recent to really qualify or use any of that. What we had discovered during his approval is that he's 100% disabled veteran through the VA, which means he collects several $1,000s a month in disability benefits for the rest of his life. We combined that income with the projected rental income from the fourplex that he was getting into, and he qualified. Get this, his down payment was 0 because of the VA loan, and his agent negotiated the closing costs to be covered by the seller. This guy closed on his fourplex without having to bring a single dollar to the table. And then there's Robert, who works up on the oil fields. He spent half the year on the slope, so 2 on, 2 off, but was still paying the full rent on his apartment for that entire year. So money was just evaporating. He came to us from a referral from a mutual friend. And after talking with him for a bit, we ended up approving him and putting him into an FHA loan at 3.5% down on a $640,000 fourplex. The building came with a new roof, a bunch of repairs, and closing costs were all handled by the seller before he even moved in. So total out of pocket, it was about $23,000 for the entire thing. The 3 other units cover his entire mortgage payment, and he rents out a room in his unit to a buddy that works the opposite shift from him. So they basically never see each other. Robert went from burning rent money on a place he lived in half of the year to owning a building that now pays entirely for itself. I've had unexpected bathroom remodels that led to major structural damage, tenants who have left the place a complete mess, people that I was kind to so often repaid me by not paying rent. I've been sued. I once had to remodel an entire unit and still send a tenant their security deposit back because I failed to understand the rules on my end. Purely my fault. I've had tenants miss rent because they went to jail on parole violations. I've questioned financial decisions at 2 a.m. in the morning. There have been plenty of moments where I had no idea where to start with a problem, but every single one of those things was fixable. They all have a solution. You're not the first person in the world to have this problem. You Google this step, you call someone who knows, and you figure it out. They're not awful mistakes. The mistakes are where the education comes from. They're what build the confidence to eventually take on bigger deals. You wouldn't be able to afford those kinds of mistakes when you have 100 doors, so you learn them at your entry. You learn them with the duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. On the buying side, things can actually be cleaner than most people expect. Sometimes you need to bring rents up a little bit after you purchase a building. It's called bringing them up to market rent. Or sometimes you got to fix a plumbing leak or do some painting. Rents generally go up over time, so market swings haven't really been something I've had to worry about. Not a single problem has been bad enough to actually make me question doing this from the very beginning. Not a single time. So if you're watching this and wondering how to get started, here's what the starting line actually looks like. You're going to need a credit score of about 640. Income-wise, $60,000 a year can work. $80,000 is more comfortable, and around 94 is with a sweet spot where the math gets really, really clean. You're going to need about 5% of whatever purchase price you're looking at in the bag, saved up, ready to rock, plus a few months of reserves. Sometimes. For a $600,000 fourplex, that breaks down to about $21,000 for the down payment, $5,000 to $8,000 in closing costs, and 3 months of a mortgage payment just as backup and reserves in the bag. The closing costs can be negotiated a lot of the times, and the reserves can come from other accounts in your ecosystem, such as like a retirement account. It doesn't necessarily need to be liquid, but you got to be able to reach out and touch it if you had to. The timeline is often faster than most people expect. You fill out a mortgage application, which takes about 10 minutes, and send you a short list of documents with things like W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. The day after that, you're generally pre-approved unless there's any kind of complication, and then you start shopping. That's it. This is the fun part. The following week, you and your realtor do some shopping. You find a fourplex or duplex. You put in an offer. 30 days later, you move in. If it's a fourplex, 3 tenants are covering your mortgage. Your housing cost is 0. And that first rung of the ladder is done. You're on it. There was a moment that happened to me that really captures what all of this feels like way better than any number on any spreadsheet. We bought a family home last winter and we moved in with 2 little babies, a toddler and a little baby. As the summer rolled around, I knew and I realized that I have no plan for this lawn. And it's like a fairly big lawn. It's a kind of lawn where you need to have a plan. Do I buy a riding mower and drop another $2,000? Do I spend 4 hours every weekend pushing a mower instead of being with my kids? The maintenance, the storage, everything that comes with owning that, I just wasn't prepared for. I didn't have capacity at that time to actually deal with it. We're just it's a lot to move in with kids. It's a lot. And so I just quickly made a call. I hired a lawn service for $60 a week. I forgot about it. Fast forward a couple weeks, I pull into the driveway after a awful week at work. I got beat up. The hours are long. It was just one of those weeks. And I was crushed because all I wanted to do was spend time with my family and my boys that whole weekend and just recharge. I had to deal and figure out the lawn. I didn't have a plan for that. And I pulled into the driveway and I just sat there basking in awesomeness because I forgot that I had hired the lawn service. And when I was picturing kind of busy weekend, I stepped out of my car and the grass is cut. It is crispy lines. It smells like green grass. And my kids are already playing in the yard because it was a beautiful day. I sat in the car just sitting in that feeling. And this is what this builds: the ability to spend $60 a week to have your lawn mode so that way you can have that time reallocated to your kids, your family, recharging and buying back your time. I am a mortgage broker in Anchorage, Alaska. I did this for my own family and now I help other people do the same. If you want someone to look at your situation and just to kind of tell you where you stand, is this doable? Is this workable in your situation? The link is down below. We'll run a pre-approval. We'll see what programs fit best or what strategy works best and map out your leverage ladder starting from the first rung. And if you want to keep learning on your own, I've got other videos on this channel that go deeper into all these specific tools and examples. I'll link a couple at the end. Thanks for watching.